The scream split the night in two. Lucinda Hale froze where she stood on the overlook, the world below her glittering beneath a skin of frost. Snow drifted through the air in slow, hypnotic spirals, catching the glow from the town square's Christmas lights. Only moments earlier, Frost Hollow Resort had looked like something out of a postcard, the kind of place honeymooners dreamed of and magazines wrote about. But now, under the heavy clouds, it seemed warped, haunted. The scream came again, raw, animal, and wrong. Lucinda's breath puffed out in misty bursts. Her wolf stirred beneath her skin, restless and uneasy. The wind carried the scent of fear, sharp and acrid, almost metallic. Someone was hurt. "This is your doing," she whispered to herself, voice cracking as she pressed a gloved hand against her lips. Her alpha had meddled with things better left buried. In his desperation to keep their failing resort alive, to protect their pack's livelihood, he had gone too far. The ritual they'd performed on the frozen lake wasn't meant to be invoked. Not by wolves. Not by anyone. Another scream tore through the air, echoing off the mountains until it seemed to come from everywhere at once. Lucinda stumbled forward, her boots crunching over the snow-laden boardwalk, the Christmas tree ahead looming like a sentinel. "What's going on?" A man's voice called behind her, human, confused, frightened. One of the guests, no doubt. Before Lucinda could think of a lie, something stumbled into the circle of lights near the massive spruce. A figure, small, staggering, leaving a trail of scarlet drops in the snow. "Tessa," a woman's voice wailed. Lucinda's stomach plunged. Her wolf's hackles rose. The scent on the air was unmistakable, wolf blood, mingled with something else, something ancient. They had wanted tourists. They had wanted their town to thrive again. But not like this. She moved fast, kneeling beside the collapsed girl as panicked voices rose around her. "Are you hurt?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. The girl's eyes were glassy, her pupils dilated, her lips trembling blue. "Tessa's in the cave," the girl whispered. Her voice was barely more than a breath. "She's frozen. Like ice." Lucinda's heartbeat stuttered. "What cave?" "The one by the cliffs." The girl's teeth chattered violently. There was a woman. In white. She took her. Sirens wailed somewhere down the valley, human authorities racing toward a nightmare they couldn't begin to understand. Lucinda looked up at the gathering crowd, humans with wide, bewildered eyes, and realized the truth could never reach them. "Poor thing's delirious," she told them smoothly, brushing snow from the girl's hair. "Hallucinations from hypothermia." They nodded. Humans always wanted easy answers. But Lucinda knew better. Her pack had unleashed something ancient from the mountains. Something that would not rest. And by the time the sirens arrived, the snow would have swallowed all evidence, except for the faint, haunting melody that carried on the wind, a lullaby that didn't belong to this world. Chapter 1, 3 years later. Clara Hayes balanced the phone between her shoulder and ear, a tray of steaming mugs in her hands. The laughter and low hum of chatter from the bar wrapped around her like warmth. Fairy lights twinkled in the wood-paneled walls, reflecting in the polished bottles behind the counter. Her sister's voice screeched through the receiver, loud enough to make her wince. "You're what? You're not coming home for Christmas again?" "Riley," Clara sighed, ducking behind the counter to restock glasses. "I work at a ski resort. This is our busiest time of year." "But Stella made you a present," Riley continued. "How am I supposed to tell her that her favorite aunt would rather serve spiked cocoa to strangers than spend the holidays with her own niece?" Clara forced a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "Tell her I'll visit for her birthday, okay? The tips here are too good to walk away from." From the far end of the bar, someone turned up the television volume. "Hey, they're talking about the resort again." Clara's stomach tightened as she heard the familiar words. Tragedy struck Frost Hollow Resort 3 years ago when 24-year-old Tessa Monroe went missing during a snowstorm. Her hand trembled. The mugs clinked together. The TV showed old footage, her younger self, tear-streaked and frantic, pleading for someone to believe her. They always used the same clip, year after year, right around Christmas. As if her grief had become part of the holiday programming. Customers began to whisper, glancing from the screen to her. Clara quickly switched the channel, muting Mariah Carey mid-chorus. "Music's better, right?" she said, forcing a smile that felt brittle. Riley's voice crackled through the phone again. "Clara, are you even listening to me? You can't hide in that town forever. You need to move on. Maybe get a job closer to family?" Clara stared at the muted screen, at the place she'd once stood, snow blowing through the dark, screaming Tessa's name. "I like it here," she said finally. It's quiet. Quiet. Riley snorted. You mean creepy? Everyone knows what happened there. Before Clara could respond, a gentler voice came through the line. Honey? Her mother. Wonderful. Mom, hi, Clara said lightly, wiping down the counter. You don't have to pretend with me, sweetheart, her mother said softly. Are you still taking your medication? Clara froze, then forced a cheerful tone. Of course, Mom. It wasn't true. She'd stopped months ago. They made her feel like she was living underwater, her thoughts sluggish, her dreams heavy. Listen, I've got a crowd waiting on drinks, she cut in quickly. Love you. Talk later. She hung up before her mother could say another word. The laughter and music from the main room swelled again. Clara straightened, pasted on her professional smile, and stepped back into the glow of the bar. A few regulars raised their glasses in greeting. But one patron, Dave, one of the ski instructors, was still staring at the muted TV. His eyes went wide as he pointed at her. Holy crap, he said loudly. You're her. You're that crazy girl from the news, the one who said her friend turned to ice. The room went quiet. Clara's grip tightened on the bar towel. I said she disappeared in a snowstorm, she corrected coldly. Dave snorted. Yeah, and then you told the cops you saw an ice statue and a ghost lady. Come on, that's... Clara cut him off by flipping the TV off entirely. You need another drink, Dave, or are we done here? A few people laughed awkwardly. The tension eased, but Clara could feel her pulse hammering in her throat. Later, after the last customers left and the snow began to fall again, she stepped outside to toss the trash. The night was eerily still, the only sounds the whisper of wind and the soft crackle of frost settling on the roofs. She didn't see the man until he spoke. Excuse me, he said, voice rough with cold. Clara turned, startled. A man was standing near the dumpster, tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in an expensive coat that looked wildly out of place for this small mountain town. His hair was dark, his face pale, and his eyes, strange. Amber, with flecks of gold that caught the light like a predator's. I'm looking for my daughter, he said breathlessly, holding out a photo. Have you seen her? Clara took the picture, a teenage girl, smiling shyly at the camera. Sorry, she said, shaking her head. Haven't seen her. Chapter 2, The Stranger on the Couch. Clara Hayes kicked the apartment door shut behind her, the sound echoing through the narrow stairwell. The man she half-carried, half-dragged inside was heavier than he looked. His coat was soaked, his shoes dripping melted snow across the worn floorboards. Sit, she ordered, breathless. To her surprise, he obeyed. He sank into her second-hand couch with a tired sort of grace, eyes tracking her like he was studying a puzzle he couldn't solve. The apartment smelled of cinnamon candles, pine cleaner, and old wood. Cozy, if a little cluttered. Strings of fairy lights ran along the beams, remnants of Christmases Clara had spent trying to make this lonely place feel like home. I should warn you, she said, rummaging through a cupboard for her first aid kit. I'm not exactly a doctor. He chuckled, a low, rough sound that did strange things to her pulse. That's fine. I'm not exactly dying. Clara shot him a look. You're bleeding through your pants, so let's not test that theory. When she knelt in front of him, her knees brushing his boots, he didn't flinch. His eyes followed her movements with a kind of detached curiosity, or maybe he was just too dizzy to care. She peeled back the torn fabric at his thigh, expecting to find an ugly gash. Instead, there was only smooth, unbroken skin. Not even a scratch. What the? She whispered. He tilted his head, as though her confusion amused him. Healed. Clara blinked. Healed? You mean magically disappeared within an hour healed? He leaned back against the couch, exhaustion shadowing his features. Something like that. For the first time, she noticed the faint, silvery shimmer under his skin, a scar that seemed too perfect, too deliberate. Her instincts whispered that this man wasn't normal. But then, who was she to talk about normal? You stabbed yourself, she asked before she could stop herself. He smiled faintly. It seemed like a good idea at the time. Clara stared. You realize that's not how most people get clarity. I'm not most people. She couldn't argue with that. There was something otherworldly about him, even half-conscious and wearing blooded clothes. His voice carried a quiet authority, the kind that made her want to listen even when she shouldn't. She swallowed hard. So, do I get a name, or am I just going to keep calling you Mystery Man who bleeds fast and heals faster? He hesitated, as if weighing the danger of answering. Then, simply, Dorian. Dorian what? A ghost of a smirk touched his lips. Vale. Well, Dorian Vale, Clara said, standing and crossing her arms, you're lucky I didn't leave you out there. You could have frozen to death. He looked up at her with those strange amber eyes, sharp and unreadable. You shouldn't have brought me here. The words weren't a threat. They sounded more like a warning. Yeah, well, Clara muttered, call it bad judgment or good karma. She grabbed a blanket from the armchair and tossed it over him. He caught it effortlessly, the motion smooth despite his supposed exhaustion. Try to get some rest, she said, turning toward her small kitchen. I'll make tea. But as she filled the kettle, a sound rose behind her, soft, almost melodic. Humming. Clara froze, her hand tightening around the handle. The tune was faint but familiar, too familiar. A haunting lullaby that had echoed in her dreams for 3 years. She turned slowly. Dorian was half asleep, head tilted back, lips moving silently. The melody hummed through the air, and for a heartbeat, Clara was back in that cave, the cold biting her skin, Tessa's frozen face staring back at her. No, she whispered, her heart hammering. It's just a coincidence. Has to be. The kettle shrieked. The spell broke. By the time she turned off the stove, Dorian had drifted into sleep. She stood there for a long moment, staring at the stranger who'd just walked out of her nightmares, and wondered what exactly she'd brought into her home. Chapter 3, The Alpha and the Ghosts. Dorian Vale woke to the smell of cinnamon and burnt toast. His senses sharpened instantly. He wasn't in his suite at the Hale Hotel, that much was obvious. The room was small, crowded with books, mismatched furniture, and the faint hum of an old radiator. A human space. He sat up slowly, wincing as his head throbbed. The last clear memory he had was Victoria. No, Lucinda Hale, raising her glass across from him, her ice-blue eyes too calm. Then the bitter taste of drugged wine, the blur of motion, and a crash of shattering glass. He'd escaped. Barely. And now he was in a stranger's apartment, marked by the scent of honey and citrus, hers. Good morning. He turned toward the voice. Clara stood in the doorway, holding 2 mugs, her hair pulled into a messy bun that somehow made her look maddeningly real. She was wearing a sweatshirt several sizes too big, her bare feet peeking from flannel pajama pants. The contrast between her warmth and the chill of his world made something stir uneasily inside him. You found me like this? He asked. You found me, actually, she said, handing him a mug. Outside. Saving me from a nosy reporter before collapsing like a fainting prince. He frowned. Reporter. Yeah. Said his daughter's missing. She studied him. You know anything about that? Dorian's jaw tightened. He'd seen the girl, frozen, preserved, her expression peaceful and horrifying all at once. But a human wouldn't understand. I've heard rumors, he said evenly. 3 disappearances, all near the cliffs. Clara looked away, shoulders tensing. I don't want to talk about it. Why not? Because nobody believes me when I do. He recognized that bitterness. It was the tone of someone who'd seen truth and been punished for it. People fear what doesn't fit their version of reality, he said quietly. Especially when it howls back. Her gaze flicked to him. That's poetic. You a writer or something? He gave a humorless smile. Or something. She frowned, studying him. You're not exactly a tourist, are you? He hesitated, weighing how much to reveal. His instincts screamed caution. She was human, unmarked, unguarded. But something in her steady gray eyes disarmed him. I'm here on business, he said finally. Looking into a disappearance. A friend of mine. Jonah Reed. Clara blinked. That name sounds familiar. It should. He used to work for the Hales, the family that owns this resort. At that, she grimaced. Lucinda Hale. Yeah, everyone here knows her. The woman practically is Frost Hollow. She's dangerous. Clara gave a short laugh. You say that like you've met her. I have, he said flatly. Something in his tone made her go still. You're serious? I don't joke about monsters, Dorian replied, setting his mug down. Her stomach twisted. So you think she's behind the missing people? He hesitated. I think she's hiding something. And whatever it is, it's tied to this place. The air between them thickened. Outside, wind rattled the window panes, scattering flakes across the glass like ghostly fingerprints. You should be careful, Clara, he said, his voice low, almost intimate. Things are stirring in these mountains that don't sleep quietly. Her pulse jumped. You talk like a man who believes in curses. I believe in consequences, he said simply. Before Clara could answer, a loud, familiar knock echoed downstairs, sharp, impatient, unmistakable. Who the hell? She muttered, going pale as a child's voice shouted from below. Aunt Clara. Open up. Her eyes widened. Oh, no. Chapter 4, Family and Lies. By the time Clara reached the door, her family was already halfway inside. Her mother stood in the doorway in a bright floral dress entirely unsuited to the mountain chill. Behind her came Grandpa Walter, leaning on his old ranger's cane, grinning as though breaking into her apartment was a delightful adventure. Riley followed, crisp as always, hair perfect, her husband Mark trailing behind her with an apologetic shrug. And front and center was 6-year-old Stella, beaming up at Clara with mittened hands. Aunt Clara, she squealed, flinging herself forward. We came for Christmas. Surprise. Clara blinked, overwhelmed. Surprise is one word for it. Her mother clasped her hands. Honey, if you won't come to the Bahamas, then the Bahamas will come to you. Walter cackled. Minus the sun, plus the snow. Clara groaned. You can't just show up. Her sister cut her off smoothly. We were worried. You haven't answered half our calls. And then we saw the news, another disappearance. I don't want to talk about that, Clara said tightly. Riley raised a brow. You never do. Before Clara could argue, a new sound filtered down from upstairs, the unmistakable rush of running water. Her mother frowned. Sweetheart, is someone in your shower? Clara froze. No. That's, probably the pipes. Riley's gaze landed on the expensive men's jacket draped over the back of the couch. Her brows shot up. That's not a pipe, Clara. That's Prada. Oh, for the love of. The bathroom door upstairs opened. Steam poured into the hall. Dorian appeared at the top of the stairs, toweling his dark hair, a single white towel slung dangerously low on his hips. Time stopped. Riley's jaw dropped. Mark looked impressed. Walter gave a low whistle. And Clara wanted to sink through the floor. Dorian paused mid-step, taking in the stunned faces of her family. Hello, he said politely, voice deep and smooth as whiskey. Her mother clasped her hands together, eyes shining. Oh, Clara, she whispered. You didn't tell us you had a boyfriend. Clara nearly choked. His not. Dorian's arm slid casually around her waist, pulling her close. Actually, he said with that infuriating calm, she was going to. We were keeping things quiet. Her family collectively gasped. Riley recovered first, smirking. Well, you finally managed to surprise us. Clara elbowed Dorian hard in the ribs. He didn't even flinch. Could we maybe not do this right now? She hissed under her breath. He leaned down, his breath brushing her ear. You're the one who invited me inside. She swore she could hear the smirk in his tone. Her mother clasped her hands together. Well, this calls for breakfast. Or champagne. Or both. Champagne it is, Grandpa Walter declared cheerfully. As they bustled into the kitchen, Clara spun on Dorian. What was that? She demanded in a furious whisper. He raised a brow. Damage control. You lied to my family. You were about to. She opened her mouth, then shut it again. Technically, he wasn't wrong. I don't even know you, she hissed. He looked far too amused. Then you should probably fix that. After all, we're dating now. Chapter 5, Breakfast, Lies and Other Natural Disasters. Clara Hayes had survived avalanches, rude tourists, and 3 years of whispered pity, but nothing had prepared her for breakfast with her family and a half-naked stranger claiming to be her boyfriend. The tiny kitchen looked like a sitcom set built on chaos. Her mother had commandeered the stove, Riley was polishing the silverware that didn't need polishing, Grandpa Walter hummed Christmas carols into his coffee, and Dorian Vale, her alleged boyfriend, sat at the table looking like Sin in a borrowed flannel shirt that barely fit across his shoulders. Clara tried not to stare. She failed. Spectacularly. Pass the syrup, sweetheart, her mother said, tone loaded. Dorian reached across Clara to hand it over. His arm brushed her shoulder, she jumped as though shocked. The smug glimmer in his amber eyes said he'd noticed. So, Riley began sweetly, slicing into a pancake, how did you two meet? Clara opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Dorian, the traitor, smiled. At her bar. I spilled a drink on her. Her sister's eyes sparkled. Oh, that's adorable. It was whiskey, Dorian continued, perfectly solemn. Expensive whiskey. She threatened to murder me with a cocktail shaker. Laughter rippled around the table. Even Walter chuckled. Clara glared at him. He's exaggerating. I'm complimenting, Dorian countered, that smooth voice wrapping around every word. You're very persuasive when you're angry. Her mother made a small delighted sound. Riley's smirk grew predatory. Clara concentrated on her pancakes. When breakfast ended, her family dispersed, Riley to unpack, Grandpa to nap, her mother to inspect the guest room. Clara cornered Dorian by the window overlooking the snowy street. You're enjoying this way too much. He shrugged. They believe it. That's the point, isn't it? I wanted believable, not Oscar-worthy. Dorian's mouth curved. You think I'm that convincing? She folded her arms. Don't what? Smile like that. Like what? Like you know things you shouldn't. He stepped closer, the air shifting between them. Maybe I do. For a second, the world narrowed to the space between them, the faint scent of pine from his skin, the snow-blurred light catching the gold in his eyes. Her heart stumbled. Then her mother's voice floated down the hall. You two planning to visit the resort today? Clara jumped back. Yes. Absolutely, she shouted too loudly. Dorian chuckled. Field trip it is. Chapter 6, The Resort and the Ruse. The Hale Hotel rose from the mountain like a castle carved from ice and stone. Flags snapped in the wind, the polished facade gleamed under a pale sun. Clara had seen it 1,000 times, yet with Dorian beside her, it felt different, like stepping into someone else's story. He held the door for her, his touch brushing the small of her back. Try to look smitten, he murmured. I'll try not to look homicidal. Inside, the lobby glittered with chandeliers and garlands. Lucinda Hale stood near the grand staircase, every inch the ice queen in white cashmere and pearls. When her gaze landed on Dorian, her smile thinned. Mr. Vale, she said coolly. I wasn't expecting you to return so soon. Dorian's tone was pleasant, but Clara sensed the steel underneath. Couldn't stay away. He slipped an arm around Clara's waist. Wanted to show my girlfriend the view. Lucinda's eyes flicked to Clara, assessing, dismissive. How charming. Clara smiled tightly. Lovely place you have. Lucinda's lips barely moved. Do enjoy your stay. Some of our attractions are best admired from a distance. As they walked away, Clara whispered, She hates me. Dorian's jaw flexed. She hates everyone. Especially those who see too much. They took the elevator up to the observation lounge. From here, the mountains stretched endless and white, ridges like sleeping beasts. Dorian leaned on the railing, scanning the horizon with predatory focus. What are you looking for? She asked. Patterns. Tracks places that don't belong. Like caves? She said before thinking. He turned, eyes narrowing. You've seen one. Clara's stomach dropped. I told you, I don't want to talk about that night. Because it scares you, he said softly. She met his gaze. Wouldn't it scare you, if you watched your best friend freeze solid while singing a lullaby to the dark? Silence stretched between them. Then he said, almost gently, yes. It would. Something unspoken passed through the air, understanding, fragile as frost. Come on, she muttered, breaking it. If we're pretending to date, we should at least look like we're having fun. His grin returned, wicked and warm. Define fun. Chapter 7, Lessons in Pretending. By the time they returned to town, Clara's family had decorated her entire apartment. Tinsel dangled from the ceiling fan, a tree glittered in the corner, the smell of sugar cookies battled the scent of pine. Riley clapped her hands. Perfect timing. Couples game night. Couples, what? Clara asked. Holiday trivia, charades, maybe some mistletoe later, Riley said innocently. Dorian looked delighted. I love games. Clara muttered, I bet you do. An hour later she was losing spectacularly. Dorian guessed every answer before she could blink, his smug satisfaction radiating across the room. He leaned close, voice low enough for only her to hear. You make the best faces when you're frustrated. Keep talking and I'll show you another one. Riley interrupted with a mischievous grin. Last round. The couple's challenge. You have to act out your partner's favorite romantic movie. Clara groaned. Can't we skip? Rules are rules, Walter said cheerfully. Before she could protest, Dorian had already stood. He extended a hand to her. Dance with me. There's no music. There's always music, he murmured. He drew her in. His hand found the curve of her back, hers landed awkwardly on his shoulder. And then, slowly, he began to move, guiding her in a rhythm she hadn't realized she knew. Someone turned down the lights. The world shrank again to warmth and breath and the faint scent of snow on his skin. "You're not half bad," she whispered. "Neither are you," he said, eyes never leaving hers. Her pulse stumbled. The air between them crackled, something dangerous, magnetic. For a heartbeat, she forgot it was pretend. A loud throat clearing shattered the moment. Riley held up mistletoe with a devilish smile. "Tradition." Clara froze. "Riley." "Oh, come on," her sister coaxed. "One little kiss for the holidays." All eyes turned toward them. Dorian leaned in, close enough that she felt his breath. "You want them to believe us, don't you?" he murmured. Her answer came out as a whisper. "This is insane." "Completely." His lips brushed hers, light, tentative, a question rather than a claim. Heat shot through her like wildfire. The room erupted in cheers. When he finally pulled back, his expression was unreadable. Clara's knees felt suspiciously unreliable. "Convincing enough?" he asked softly. She glared to hide the tremor in her voice. "You're impossible." "Thank you." Chapter 8, Echoes in the Snow. Later that night, long after her family had gone to bed, Clara stood by the window watching snow drift through the amber streetlights. Her reflection looked pale, uncertain. Behind her, Dorian stirred on the couch where he'd insisted on sleeping. "You should rest," he said without opening his eyes. "I can't. Every time I close them, I hear that song." He sat up, expression shadowed. "The humming." She nodded. "It was there again tonight. When the wind picked up." Dorian rose, crossing to stand beside her. "That song doesn't belong to the living," he said quietly. She turned toward him. "What are you saying?" "That whatever took your friend, it isn't done." The words sank into her like stones. Outside, the wind moaned through the eaves, carrying a note that could have been nothing, or the beginning of that same haunting lullaby. Clara shivered. Dorian's hand came to rest lightly on her shoulder, steady and warm. "Whatever this is," he said, voice low, "you're not facing it alone anymore." For the first time in 3 years, she wanted to believe that. Chapter 9, The Strangers in the Snow. Frost Hollow looked softer under morning light, but the calm was a lie. Clara felt it the moment she stepped outside, the mountain watching, listening. Dorian stood beside her truck, phone pressed to his ear, his breath rising in white curls. He'd been pacing since dawn, speaking in clipped tones she couldn't quite hear. When he noticed her, the conversation ended abruptly. "Problem?" she asked. He slipped the phone into his pocket. "Just, colleagues arriving early." "Colleagues?" she echoed. "The kind who carry briefcases or the kind who glower at everyone and smell like trouble?" His mouth curved. "Mostly the second kind." A rumble of engines came from the road below. 2 black SUVs wound through the snow, sunlight flashing across their windshields. They stopped beside the resort's gate, and 3 figures stepped out, 2 men and 1 woman, all broad-shouldered, all moving with the quiet assurance of people who were used to command. The woman reached Dorian first. "Alpha," she said under her breath, a word that hit Clara's spine like static. He gave a barely perceptible nod. "This is Clara Hayes," he said aloud, tone deliberately casual. "Clara, these are some old friends, Marek, Evie, and Ben." Evie's handshake was firm, her eyes sharp and assessing. "Pleasure," she said. The word sounded like a test. Marek scanned the tree line. "This place smells wrong." Clara forced a laugh. "That's just the pine sap." Dorian shot him a warning look. "Inside. We'll talk upstairs." They disappeared into the lodge. Clara watched them go, unease gnawing at her. Alpha. Not a business title. Something older. Chapter 10, Footprints and Echoes. The day blurred with activity. Tourists checked in, sleigh bells jingled on the slope road, and somewhere above it all the mountain wind carried a low hum that made Clara's skin prickle. Near dusk she found Dorian in the observation lounge, staring at the snowfields through the wide glass windows. He changed into dark clothes that blended with the shadow around him. On the table lay a folded map and a series of photographs, grainy images of boot prints that began in the middle of nowhere and ended at a blank patch of ice. She leaned over his shoulder. "Those from your colleagues?" He nodded. "Found them near the North Ridge. Same place where your friend vanished." Her throat tightened. "You think it's starting again?" "I think whatever's under that mountain never stopped." He tapped the map. The prints freeze mid-stride, Clara. No slide marks, no drag. Like the person just vanished. A shiver rippled through her. Couldn't that be snowdrift? He looked up, eyes catching the dim light, flecked gold like embers. You don't really believe that? She didn't. Lightning flickered beyond the clouds, silent and distant. The storm forecast had arrived early. Dorian rolled up the map. Come on. We're heading to the ridge before it closes in. Chapter 11, Cabin in the Storm. The wind found them halfway up the trail. It howled through the pines, lifting plumes of snow like ghosts. By the time they reached the old ranger's cabin, daylight had dissolved into swirling gray. Dorian shoved the door open. Dust and cold air spilled out. Inside. Clara stumbled over the threshold. The place smelled of wood smoke and age. A stone fireplace sat cold against one wall, broken chairs leaned in the corners. He found matches, coaxed a flame to life, and soon the room glowed in amber light. Storm's too heavy to head back, he said. We'll wait it out. Clara sank to the floor near the fire, hugging her knees. Perfect. Trapped on a mountain with my fake boyfriend. Nothing weird about that. He gave a quiet laugh. I can take the couch. There is no couch. Then I'll sit guard. Guard against what? Snowflakes. His expression didn't change. Sometimes snow hides teeth. She wanted to joke, but the look in his eyes stopped her. Outside, the wind shrieked like something alive. After a while, she whispered, You're really not going to tell me who you are you? I told you. Dorian Vale. That's a name, not a truth. He hesitated, then crouched beside her. All right. Truth. The firelight caught the faint mark at his throat, a scar shaped like a crescent. Where I come from, there are people who carry an older blood. We keep to our kind, stay hidden. But something here is stirring that threatens all of us. She met his gaze. And I'm part of that somehow. You saw it once. That means it saw you too. The room seemed to shrink around them. Snow beat against the windows. He reached for a blanket from his pack and draped it around her shoulders. His hand lingered, rough and warm. She didn't move. You're trembling, he murmured. It's freezing. He settled beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. Heat seeped through the layers of wool. For a long time neither spoke. The fire popped, the wind howled, the world beyond the cabin vanished into white. Finally she said, You ever get tired of pretending? He looked at her, expression unreadable. Every day. Their eyes met, steady and searching. She didn't know who leaned first, maybe both, but their foreheads touched, a simple press of warmth against the cold. Dorian, she whispered. He exhaled, voice low. You smell like home. The words shouldn't have mattered, yet they lodged in her chest. She closed her eyes, breathing him in, the scent of pine, smoke, and something wild beneath the surface. Outside, thunder rolled across the peaks. Chapter 12, The Howl. Sometime after midnight, the fire burned low. Clara woke to silence so deep it felt wrong. Dorian sat near the window, bare-armed, watching the storm. What is it? She whispered. He didn't answer right away. Then she heard it too, a sound carried on the wind, distant yet close. A howl, long and mournful, not coyote, not wolf, something older. Dorian rose. Stay inside. She caught his wrist. Don't you dare. Clara. His tone was command, but gentler than before. If it's what I think, I can't ignore it. He slipped out into the night, the door slamming behind him. Snow whirled in through the crack before she could close it. 4 endless minutes she listened, heart pounding. The wind screamed, something thudded against the wall, then came another sound, softer, almost musical. The lullaby. She covered her ears. No, no, no. The door burst open. Dorian staggered inside, half covered in snow, eyes bright gold. Get away from the window, he barked. Behind him, the darkness moved, shapes gliding between trees, glints of white like frostbitten faces. He slammed the door and leaned against it, chest heaving. It's awake. What is? The mountain's curse. The thing your friend saw. He met her gaze, all traces of humor gone. And it knows you're here. Chapter 13, The Vow. The wind beat against the cabin until dawn, but the things outside never forced their way in. When silence finally returned, the snow was untouched, as if nothing had ever moved beyond the trees. Clara sat wrapped in the blanket, watching Dorian clean his hands at the basin. Faint lines of silver ran across his knuckles, scars that hadn't been there hours ago. He saw her staring and flexed his fingers. Just scratches. From what? He hesitated. You wouldn't believe me. Try me. He looked up. Ice that bleeds. She swallowed. You mean it's alive? I mean it's hungry. The room fell quiet again. Then, softly, why are you helping me, Dorian? He turned fully toward her, the firelight painting his face in golden shadow. Because 3 years ago, I failed someone I was supposed to protect. I don't plan to repeat it. Something in his voice, a thread of guilt, raw and old, made her chest ache. She reached out before she could stop herself, resting her hand over his. His skin was cool now, steady. You won't, she said. For a moment, he just looked at her. Then he closed his fingers around hers, a silent promise in the gesture. Outside, the first light touched the peaks, turning the snow pink and gold. The world looked peaceful again, but both of them knew peace was a lie. Chapter 14, After the Storm. The world had turned glass bright after the blizzard. The snow was too clean, the sky too clear, like the mountain was pretending nothing had happened. Clara followed Dorian down the trail in silence, boots crunching through the crusted powder. He carried himself as if he hadn't spent the night fighting ghosts in a storm, only the set of his shoulders betrayed the weight he carried. When the roofs of Frost Hollow came into view, he spoke at last. No one needs to know what we saw. She stopped. You think I'd tell anyone? Not you. He looked back at the town. Them? The way he said them, soft, cautious, made her glance at the resort's distant silhouette. Lucinda? He gave the faintest nod. She'll feel the disturbance. She always does. They reached the parking lot to find Evie leaning against one of the black SUVs, scanning the tree line. You were gone too long, she said, eyes flicking between them. Alpha, the Hale patrols are sweeping the lower road. Clara frowned. Patrols? Like, security guards. Something like that, Evie said, though her tone turned wry. With better hearing. Chapter 15, The Uninvited Guests. By evening, the resort's bar was buzzing again. Tourists toasted the clear sky, music drifted from hidden speakers. Clara moved through it all like a ghost behind the counter. Every now and then, she caught a glimpse of Dorian or one of his pack at a table near the windows, always alert, always watching. Lucinda Hale entered just after sunset. Conversation dimmed the way it did when the principal walked into a classroom. Her presence rearranged the room, voices lowered, backs straightened, smiles turned careful. She approached the bar with that perfect social host smile. Miss Hayes, isn't it? I hear you and Mr. Vale are enjoying our little mountain. Clara kept her tone polite. It's memorable. Lucinda's gaze slid past her to the reflection in the mirror, straight to Dorian. Be sure he remembers his manners, she said softly, and that he pays his bill before he leaves town. Then she drifted away, silk and perfume and something colder underneath. When she was gone, Clara realized her palms were damp on the counter. She caught Dorian's reflection. He hadn't moved, but the muscles in his jaw ticked once, hard. Later, as the bar emptied, he waited for her by the service door. She spoke to you. Something about paying my tab, Clara said lightly. Why do I feel that was code for something? Because it was. He handed her a folded napkin. Scrawled on it were coordinates and a single word, tonight. Her stomach dipped. You're going to meet her? No. Marek is. I want you to stay away from the north wing. Dorian. Please. The word came rough, almost human. Just trust me this once. She did. But sleep refused to come. Chapter 16, Fault Lines. Near midnight she went for a walk, needing air. The corridors were empty except for the distant hum of generators. Frost Hollow after hours always felt different, like a stage after the actors had left. She turned a corner and froze. Marek stood near the staff elevator, his back to her, voice low. We can't hold the border if they keep pushing. The Hale pack's already on the ridge. Another voice crackled through his earpiece, Evie's. Then fall back. Don't engage unless the Alpha says. Clara ducked behind a column. Pack. Border. The words weren't metaphors. Her heart thudded. Marek ended the call, rubbing his temples. When he finally noticed her, his eyes flashed, literal light, brief and amber. You shouldn't wonder, Miss Hayes. I couldn't sleep. He smiled without warmth. Neither can wolves when there's blood on the wind. She stepped back. Excuse me? Nothing. He turned away, his voice soft again. Go home, Clara. She ran. Chapter 17. The Space Between. Dorian found her outside by the frozen fountain. The wind tugged her hair across her face. She didn't notice until he reached out and brushed it aside. His touch was light, careful. You followed Marek, he said quietly. You all keep talking in riddles. Her voice shook. You said pack, he said border. Just tell me the truth. For a moment he only looked at her. Then, you already know what we are. No, I don't. I guess. I imagine. But if you want me to trust you, stop hiding. He exhaled, breath clouding between them. There are people born tied to the wild. We shift when the moon calls, when danger rises. Lucinda is one of us. So am I. The ones missing from this mountain. Something's using our kind to open a door that should stay closed. Her heartbeat filled her ears. And me? Why drag me into it? Because you're the only witness still alive. The honesty in his voice hit harder than fear. She swallowed. You could have lied. I'm tired of lying to you. Silence stretched, fragile as frost. Snow began to fall again, lazy, slow flakes drifting through the halo of the lamp. Dorian reached up, brushing one from her cheek. You should go inside. It's colder than it looks. So are you, she murmured. He smiled faintly. Not when you're near. Something between a laugh and a breath escaped her. For a second, the mountain and its ghost didn't exist, only warmth, steady and real, between two people standing too close under falling snow. Chapter 18. The Crack in the Ice. The next morning, Frost Hollow pretended at normal again. Skiers lined up at the lifts, children built crooked snowmen, music piped from speakers along the lodge deck. But Clara felt the tension humming beneath it all, a thread only she seemed to hear. Evie caught her in the hallway, whispering, if he tells you to run, you run. Don't wait for him. What? Why? Because the Hale pack's moving tonight. Before Clara could ask more, the fire alarm blared, a single shrill note that cut through every conversation. Staff herded guests toward exits, lights flashed red against white walls. Out by the main window, a section of the slope had collapsed into a sinkhole, steam rising from the gap. Clara pressed to the glass. At the bottom, something glittered, not ice, not rock. A slab of perfect frost shaped almost like a door. She turned to find Dorian already beside her, eyes burning gold. It's breaking open, he said. Lucinda Hale's voice drifted from behind them, smooth and certain. Yes. And you, dear Alpha, are too late to stop it. Chapter 19. The Door in the Ice. The alarm still howled through the resort when the glass of the observation window splintered from the pressure outside. Beyond the slope, the sinkhole steamed like a living wound. In its center, the slab of ice pulsed, once, twice, then cracked down the middle with a sound like thunder. Clara felt it in her bones. The temperature dropped, breath misted white, the air smelled of metal and rain. Lucinda Hale stepped forward, her poise untouched by the chaos around her. 3 years, she said, voice carrying through the crowd, and the mountain finally answers. Dorian moved to block Clara's view, every line of him sharpened to readiness. His pack fanned out behind him, Marek, Evie, Ben, forming an unspoken wall. Call them off, Dorian said, low and steady. Whatever you've started, stop it. Lucinda's smile barely moved. You always did misunderstand power, Vale. We are its custodians, not its masters. The mountain chooses. The crack widened. Light spilled out, blue, cold, hypnotic. Snow lifted in a slow spiral, drawn toward the fissure like dust toward a flame. The crowd gasped, cell phones rose, recording. Dorian's voice cut through it. Everyone out. Now. Evie and Marek shoved doors open, herding guests back inside. Clara hesitated until Dorian caught her hand. Don't look at it, he said, pulling her close. It listens when you do. They ran. Chapter 20. What Lies Beneath. They didn't stop until they reached the service corridor beneath the lodge. Pipes rattled overhead, the alarms were a distant echo now. Clara tried to catch her breath. What was that? What is she doing? Opening the seal, Dorian said. The first Alpha of this valley trapped something under the glacier centuries ago. Lucinda thinks she can use it to strengthen her bloodline. That sounds insane. So does turning into a wolf, he said grimly. And yet. He pulled a radio from his coat. Evie, report. Static, then Evie's breathless voice, guests evacuated. Hale enforcers on the ridge. The ice is moving. Hold position, Dorian ordered. He glanced at Clara. You're staying here. Not a chance. Clara. No. I'm done being the girl who hides while everyone else decides what's real. For a heartbeat, he looked ready to argue, then something softened in his eyes. Fine. But you do exactly what I say. Deal. He turned toward the tunnel that led to the lower lift. The air there was already shimmering with cold. Somewhere far above, the mountain groaned. Chapter 21, The Hollow Heart. They emerged near the maintenance yard. Snow still fell, but the world had gone unnaturally silent. The fissure on the slope yawned wider, a river of pale light spilling upward. Lucinda stood at its edge, hair whipping in the wind, arms raised. Around her, figures in white parkas chanted softly, the sound a low, rhythmic hum that made Clara's teeth ache. Her staff, Dorian muttered. Half-bloods. What happens if she succeeds? The seal breaks. Everything buried here wakes up. Clara's stomach twisted. Then stop her. He started forward, but Lucinda's voice rang out, amplified by the wind. You can't fight destiny, Dorian. You were meant to stand beside me, not against me. Destiny can go to hell, he shot back. The light flared. Lucinda's followers stumbled away, shielding their eyes. A shape moved inside the fissure, something vast, glinting like crystal. The air itself screamed. Dorian grabbed Clara and threw both of them behind a snowcat as a shockwave hit. Ice shards rained down, the ground lurched. When she looked up, the fissure had sealed again, but not completely. Through the remaining gap, a faint blue glow pulsed like a heartbeat. Lucinda staggered, pale but smiling. It's awake, she whispered. Then she collapsed. Chapter 22, Instinct. Silence fell except for the wind and Clara's ragged breathing. Dorian crawled from cover, scanning the slope. Evie, Marek, status. Still here, came Marek's voice. The Hales are retreating. Whatever she called, it's still under the ice. Dorian turned to Clara. Are you hurt? She shook her head, though her ears still rang. You saved me. Again. He almost smiled. Seems to be a pattern. Then his expression changed, tension flooding back. We need to move before it sends another pulse. They ran for the tree line. Halfway there, Clara stumbled. He caught her easily, pulling her against his chest to steady her. The contact sent a rush of warmth through her despite the cold. You're shaking, he said. So are you. His breath came fast, fogging the air between them. That's not fear. The words lingered, too intimate. She looked up and saw it, the faint rim of gold burning around his pupils, the first flash of the creature beneath the man. For a second, the wolf looked out through his human eyes. Dorian, she whispered. He blinked, forced the color away. It's under control. You don't look under control. Then stop looking at me like that, he said, voice rougher than before. Something deep in the forest howled in answer, low, resonant, not quite natural. He spun toward the sound, body coiled. Get back to the lodge, he said. Lock every door. Don't let anyone in unless it's me. What about you? I have to make sure it stays asleep. He hesitated, then brushed his thumb against her cheek, quick, fleeting, the kind of touch that left the air humming. I'll find you. Then he was gone, a blur disappearing into the trees. Chapter 23, Fractures. Back at the lodge, panic rippled through the staff. Power flickered, radio channels buzzed with static. Clara helped usher tourists into the dining hall, doing her best to sound calm. Riley found her near the entrance. Clara. What's happening? They said there was an avalanche. Just stay inside, Clara said, squeezing her sister's hands. I'll explain later. Her mother appeared, clutching Stella. Honey, the snow outside, it's glowing. Clara turned. Through the windows, faint veins of blue light spidered across the slope like cracks under glass. Dorian's pack burst through the door moments later, snow-covered and tense. Evie looked at Clara. Where's the Alpha? He went after it. Marek cursed under his breath. Then we hold the line here. The lights flickered again, dimmed, and steadied. Somewhere beneath their feet, the mountain groaned. Chapter 24, Vow in the Dark. Hours crawled by. The guests huddled in corners, the wind keened outside. Clara sat by the window, scanning the white horizon. Every flicker of movement made her pulse jump. When the door finally opened, Dorian stood there, soaked, exhausted, and alive. A wave of relief almost knocked her to her knees. You're hurt, she said, reaching him. He shook his head. Not mine. It's contained, for now. She didn't care who was watching. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. For a heartbeat he froze, then his body relaxed against hers, cold and solid and real. I thought I'd lost you, she whispered. Not yet, he murmured into her hair. Not if I can help it. He drew back just enough to meet her eyes. The gold was gone, leaving only the man. Lucinda's down but not finished. The ice is cracked. We've bought time, nothing more. Then we use it, Clara said. Tell me what to do. Dorian's gaze softened, pride and worry mingling. Stay close. Trust your instincts. And whatever happens, don't listen if the mountain sings. Outside, the wind rose again, carrying the faintest echo of a lullaby. Chapter 25, The Awakening. The mountain held its breath. Lucinda Hale lay motionless on the infirmary cot while Dorian's pack formed a wary semicircle around her. Frost glittered along her lashes, her skin looked carved from porcelain. Clara stood near the foot of the bed, gripping a mug of untouched tea that had long gone cold. She shouldn't be alive, Marek muttered. Half her pulse froze with the seal. Dorian didn't look away from her face. She's not done yet. As if hearing him, Lucinda's eyes snapped open. They were no longer blue but clear, crystalline, catching the lamplight like ice. When she spoke, her voice came thin and sharp. You ruined everything, Vale. You almost killed everyone, he answered. Lucinda sat up with unnatural ease. Almost is the key word. Her gaze swept the room until it found Clara. And this must be the girl who hears the mountain. Clara stiffened. I don't. You do, Lucinda said softly. It hums in your bones, doesn't it? The rhythm beneath the snow. Dorian stepped between them. Stay away from her. Lucinda smiled. Protective already. How quaint. She swung her legs off the cot. If you're wise, you'll help me repair what's been broken. The ice is split, the old thing stirs, and it wants its vessel. Evie's voice was cold. And you think she's the vessel? Lucinda's smile widened. Why else would the mountain sing to a human? A tremor rippled through the floorboards as if punctuating her words. Dust sifted from the rafters. Dorian's jaw tightened. If you know how to seal it, say so. If you're lying, I'll bury you myself. Lucinda tilted her head. Oh, Dorian. You'll need me. There's a ritual, a countersong. But it requires both halves of the bloodline. Her eyes glittered. Yours and hers. Chapter 26, Uneasy Truce. They moved her to the conference room on the resort's closed floor. The wide windows looked out on a blinding expanse of snow. Evie guarded the door, Marek checked the hallway, and Clara sat across from Lucinda with Dorian standing behind her chair. Lucinda sketched symbols on a napkin with the casual grace of someone doodling. The seal responds to resonance, she said. An old song, born of wolf and human joined in trust. The last Alpha and his mortal mate created it together. When their line divided, the song fractured. So the only way to close it, Dorian began, is through harmony, Lucinda finished, eyes sliding to Clara. She completes what you lack. Clara's pulse jumped. I don't know your magic. I'm not one of you. Yet the mountain knows your name, Lucinda said. That's enough. Dorian leaned forward, his voice low. You'll walk us through every step. Lucinda laced her fingers. Gladly. But when it's done, you'll give me what's mine. And what's that? The Hale Alpha's legacy. My freedom from this cursed valley. Silence hung heavy until Clara whispered, if it means stopping whatever's under that ice, we'll do it. Dorian's hand brushed her shoulder. We'll do it carefully. Chapter 27, Fault Lines and Trust. Preparation stretched through the day. Lucinda's instructions came measured, elegant. Gather salt from the kitchens, ash from the hearth, silver bells from the chapel. Every item had a purpose in the melody she claimed would restore the seal. Outside, fog rolled down the slopes like slow water. The temperature dropped again, radios crackled with static. Even tourists huddled indoors sensed the change. Clara and Dorian worked in silence. She mixed the ash and salt as he traced runes into a length of rope. The faint scent of cedar clung to his sleeves. Finally she said, you believe her. I believe she wants the mountain asleep more than she wants us dead. That's comforting. He looked up, something soft flickering through the tension. You're doing well. Does well mean terrified but pretending otherwise? Exactly that. He reached for her hands, dusted with gray ash, and closed them between his. Whatever happens tonight, focus on my voice. Not hers, not the song, just mine. The steady pressure of his grip slowed her heartbeat. Why me, Dorian? Why not one of your own pack? Because it heard you first. Chapter 28, The Convergence. Night fell without stars. They gathered at the crater before the sealed fissure, where faint blue light shimmered beneath a thin crust of frost. Wind screamed through the trees, carrying the scent of snow and something older, ozone, stone, memory. Lucinda stood at the rim, pale hair whipping. Begin. Dorian nodded once to his pack. Evie and Marek spread salt in a wide ring. Ben placed the silver bells at the cardinal points. When everything was ready, Lucinda began to hum. The sound was barely audible at first, a thin thread of tone that slid under the skin. The ice answered, soft, resonant. Dorian joined her with a counternote, rougher, deeper, his voice anchoring hers. Clara's chest vibrated. The rhythm climbed up her spine, into her ribs, until she realized she was humming too, unbidden, instinctive. The tones intertwined, weaving like rivers meeting. The blue light steadied, pulsing with their combined breath. Lucinda's eyes flashed. Good. Hold it. The hum deepened. The mountain rumbled. Fissures knitted, the glow dulled to silver. Clara's voice faltered, but Dorian's hand found hers, steadying her pitch. You're almost there, he whispered. Then the air shifted, wrong, heavy. Lucinda's tone changed, sliding sharp. The silver bells trembled, their notes twisting. Dorian felt it instantly. She's altering the rhythm. Lucinda's smile was too calm. Balance requires sacrifice. The fissure blazed open again. Chapter 29, Breaking Point. Wind exploded outward, throwing snow like shrapnel. Marek shouted. Evie tackled Ben away from the edge. Dorian yanked Clara behind him as a spear of light shot skyward. Stop it, he roared. Lucinda stood in the storm center, hair streaming, eyes blank. It's too late. It chose her. Clara felt something seize inside her chest, a heartbeat that wasn't hers answering the mountain's rhythm. Cold flooded her veins, frost bloomed across her sleeves. Dorian caught her face between his palms. Clara, listen to me. Stay with me. I can't stop it, she gasped. I can hear everything. Then follow my voice, he said fiercely. Not hers. He began to hum again, the same countersong, but softer now, human instead of wolf. The sound wrapped around her like warmth. She clung to it, forcing her breath to match his. Gradually the pressure eased, the frost receded. Lucinda's power faltered. She staggered, a thin cry leaving her lips as the fissure sealed with a final flash of light. When the brilliance faded, snow fell quietly again. Chapter 30, Aftermath. They found Lucinda half buried in the drift, pulse faint but steady. Evie and Marek exchanged glances. Dorian nodded. Bind her. No more chances. Clara knelt, still trembling. The ground under her palms was warm now, as if the mountain itself exhaled in relief. It's over, she whispered. For now, Dorian said. He crouched beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. You stopped it. I just sang. You matched it. That's harder. She met his eyes, exhaustion melting into a fragile smile. You always say impossible things like they're simple. That's because you make them look that way. He stood, offering his hand. She took it without hesitation. As they walked back toward the faint lights of the resort, the night settled into uneasy quiet. Behind them, Lucinda's muffled laughter drifted through the snow. You can't cage what's inside her, she murmured. She is the echo now. Dorian didn't slow. But Clara felt the words crawl under her skin, cold as the mountain's breath. Chapter 31, The Morning After. The resort woke to a deceptive calm. Fresh snow had filled every hollow, covering the torn ground around the crater until it looked untouched. Guests trickled back into the cafes, sleigh bells jingled again. If not for the faint scorch of blue along the distant ridge, Clara could have believed it had all been a dream. She stood on the deck outside the staff lounge, a mug of coffee warming her hands. The wind was soft now, brushing the flags along the roofline. Somewhere below, workers were repairing the damaged ski lift. Normal sounds. Human sounds. Dorian joined her quietly, the boards creaking under his boots. He had changed into dark clothes again, his hair still damp from the morning shower. He looked almost ordinary, except for the tired set of his mouth and the faint golden flicker that still haunted his eyes. How's the ridge? She asked. Stable, he said. Evie and Marek are patrolling. No activity, No more light. Then it's over. He gave a non-answering shrug. For now. She tried to smile. You keep saying that. Because I've learned not to trust silence. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of pine and faint ash. Clara took a sip of coffee and watched the sunlight slide across the valley. Everything feels different, she murmured. Like the mountains holding its breath. Maybe it's waiting for what comes next. She glanced at him. You mean who? He didn't deny it. Chapter 32, Stillness. By afternoon the resort looked healed. The lounge fire crackled, tourists compared ski photos, and Riley chased Stella through the hall with a paper snowball. Clara sat with her family, laughing when she was supposed to, but her attention kept drifting to the windows. Beyond the glass, the snow seemed to hum. A faint vibration brushed her spine. It was almost pleasant, like a heartbeat under the earth. She shook herself, forcing a smile when Riley nudged her. You're miles away, her sister said. Just tired. Of what? Saving the world. Clara blinked. What? Riley grinned. You and your mysterious boyfriend. Come on, everyone's talking. The power outage, the alarms, half the guests think you two stopped a gas leak or something heroic. Clara laughed softly. Something like that. Riley leaned closer. He really likes you, you know. I can tell. Clara looked down at her mug. It's complicated. Then uncomplicated before he disappears. The words lingered long after Riley left. Clara turned toward the fireplace where Dorian stood talking quietly with Evie. Even surrounded by people, he seemed apart, shoulders straight, gaze distant, like a man listening to a sound no one else could hear. When he noticed her watching, his expression softened. A small, weary smile. The hum inside her chest pulsed in reply. Chapter 33, Echoes. That night the resort's halls went still again. Clara wandered to the empty bar, tracing the polished wood with her fingertips. The lights were low, outside, flakes drifted past the windows like slow rain. She poured herself a splash of brandy and nearly dropped the glass when the wind outside rose, carrying a note, faint and clear. Not the lullaby, not exactly. This was softer, higher, almost beautiful. Hearing things, she told herself. But the glass on the counter trembled, sending ripples through the amber liquid. Clara? She jumped. Dorian stood in the doorway, coat half-buttoned, worry etched across his face. You felt it too? He asked. I thought I was imagining it. He crossed the room and laid 2 fingers against her wrist. The contact sent a thrum through her skin, the same rhythm as the one whispering in the snow. His eyes darkened. It's in you. The words came as no surprise, she'd known since Lucinda's taunt. Still, hearing them aloud hollowed her out. Can you get it out? Maybe. Maybe it's not supposed to be. She swallowed. That's not comforting. He studied her for a long moment. It doesn't feel hostile? No. It feels awake. His hand stayed on her wrist. Then we find a way to quiet it before it learns to speak. Chapter 34, Snowfall. Over the next 2 days, they built small routines around the illusion of peace. Dorian met with his pack at dawn. Clara ran the bar and tried to smile at the tourists who didn't know their vacation spot had almost become an altar. At night they'd meet by the fireplace, trading few words. One evening he found her outside stringing lights along the railing. The bulbs glowed gold against the blue twilight. You should be resting, he said. You should take your own advice. He took the strand from her hands and hooked it along the beam above her head. For a moment they stood close enough that she felt his warmth through the cold. She reached up to steady the wire, fingers brushing his. He didn't move away. I keep thinking, she said quietly, that maybe it chose me because I wasn't afraid. You were terrified, he said gently. She smiled. Then maybe it liked that better. The last bulb flickered to life. The light haloed her face. In it, his expression softened completely. I could get used to this, she murmured. Which part? Not being alone. He didn't answer, just leaned in until his forehead rested against hers. A silent promise of something they both knew would never be simple. Then, as if the mountain wanted to remind them who it belonged to, the power flickered. The bulbs dimmed, brightened, and steadied again. The moment broke. Dorian drew a slow breath. Tomorrow we leave the ridge to the pack and head down valley. You'll be safer there. I'm not running. It isn't running, he said. It's surviving. She looked toward the peaks where clouds gathered again. What if it follows? Then it's my turn to run toward it. Chapter 35, The Quiet Before. Morning came blue and brittle. The resort buzzed with ordinary life, skiers laughing, children throwing snowballs, bells ringing for the holiday brunch. Clara poured coffee for guests and tried to mimize the normal sounds. Dorian appeared at the bar, scarf dusted with snow. Evie and Marek are setting perimeter wards, he said softly. Lucinda still unconscious. Does she dream? She mutters. Mostly your name. Clara's stomach tightened. Great. He watched her a moment, then added, when this is over, there are places far from here, coast towns, safe ground. You could start again. She shook her head. I'd never hear silence there. Once you've heard a mountain breathe, beaches feel too quiet. A small smile tugged at his mouth. You talk like a wolf. Maybe I'm learning. He reached out, brushing his fingers against hers. Then we'll learn together. Outside, the sky thickened with cloud again, heavy and pale. The light over the slopes dimmed to silver. The guests didn't notice. They kept laughing, clinking glasses, chasing the illusion of endless winter fun. But Clara felt the hum stir deep under her ribs, faint but insistent, like the earth's heartbeat syncing with her own. She looked toward the mountains and whispered, "Stay asleep." The wind answered with a sigh that might have been agreement, or warning. Chapter 36, Blue Morning. Sunlight broke over the ridge in thin, glassy streaks. Frost clung to the windows, sketching lace across the panes. For the first time in weeks the mountain looked calm, yet Clara woke with her heart already beating too fast, as though her body knew something her mind refused to name. Downstairs, the resort murmured with early traffic. Boots on wood, laughter, the clang of a breakfast pan. She dressed quickly and crossed the hall. Dorian was waiting by the main doors, coffee in one hand, radio in the other, eyes on the horizon. Still standing, she said. For now. He handed her the spare cup. Sleep? Some. You? He smiled faintly. I don't remember what that is. They stepped outside. The air was sharp enough to sting, the kind of cold that cleared thought. From here the slopes glittered harmlessly, but the ridge where the fissure had opened still looked bruised, a darker line against the snow. Clara followed his gaze. It's beautiful again. Beauty doesn't mean safe, he said quietly. Neither does running. He looked at her then, really looked, and the corner of his mouth curved. You'd argue with gravity if it gave you orders. Only if it deserved it. They walked in companionable silence until the wind shifted and carried a low vibration across the valley. It was faint, barely more than a tremor beneath the surface of sound, but both of them felt it. Dorian's shoulders tensed. Hear that? She hesitated. I thought it was the wind. It isn't. Chapter 37, Fishes. The vibration faded by midday, replaced by uneasy calm. Dorian convened a short meeting in the staff conference room. Just the pack, Clara, and the muffled hum of the heaters. Evie spread a map across the table. Nothing moving on the ridge. But the sensors keep spiking every few hours, tiny pulses, like breathing. Residual energy, Marek suggested. Or it's still testing the seal, Dorian finished. He rubbed the bridge of his nose. Keep watching shifts. If it cracks again, I want to know before Lucinda does. At her name, the room went still. She was still locked in the basement infirmary, sedated and bound with silver thread. Evie glanced toward Clara. She's been quiet since yesterday. Too quiet, Marek muttered. Clara shivered. Maybe she's sleeping it off. Lucinda doesn't sleep, Dorian said. She plots. He turned back to the map, but his hand brushed Clara's where it rested on the table. The touch steadied her pulse. Small, human contact in a room filled with tension. When the meeting broke up, he lingered. You don't have to sit through these briefings. I'd rather know what's coming, she said. Even if I can't fight it. You fought more than you think. Then teach me the rest, she said softly. The challenge caught him off guard, but the look he gave her wasn't disapproval, it was respect. Chapter 38, Lessons. That afternoon he took her to the empty training deck behind the maintenance sheds. The snow there was trampled flat, ringed by old pine. First rule, he said, handing her a wooden practice staff, listen. Not with your ears, with whatever answers inside you when the world goes quiet. She raised an eyebrow. You make it sound like meditation. It's survival. He circled her slowly, steps soundless on the packed snow. Close your eyes. She obeyed. The cold crept under her collar, the mountain wind brushing her skin. Beneath it she could hear the faint hum, the same one that had haunted her since the fissure. But now it sounded less like threat, more like pulse, steady and rhythmic. Good, Dorian murmured. Now find the center of it. Make it match your breathing. She did. The hum softened, aligning with the beat of her heart. When she opened her eyes, he was standing very close, expression unreadable. That's what balance feels like, he said. Remember it. She swallowed. And if I lose it? Then I'll remind you. Their gazes locked for a long moment before a radio crackled from his belt, breaking the spell. Evie's voice came through, Lucinda's awake. Chapter 39, The Awakening, again. By the time they reached the infirmary, the temperature had dropped 10 degrees. Frost webbed across the interior windows, the lights flickered. Lucinda sat upright on the cot, restraint still in place, a faint smile playing on her lips. Such dedicated jailers, she said. And yet the mountain still hums, doesn't it? Dorian stepped closer. You feel it too. I am it, she said simply. You think you sealed the wound, but you merely taught it to breathe through another set of lungs. Her gaze slid to Clara. It likes her voice. The resonance suits. Clara felt the echo stir inside her chest, soft, answering. She bit her lip. What did you do to me? Lucinda's smile deepened. I opened a door. You stepped through. Dorian's voice was a snarl. Undo it. I can't, Lucinda said. Nor should you want me to. The mountain chose balance, and she is balance, half fear, half faith. The floor trembled. Frost dusted down from the ceiling tiles. Evie reached for Lucinda's shoulder. Enough riddles. Lucinda's eyes flashed white. The restraints snapped with a brittle sound. She didn't move to attack, she simply stood, stretching like a cat. Keep your chains if you must. But the echo inside her is only sleeping, and when it wakes, you'll beg for my help again. Dorian's hand shot out, pressing her back against the wall. If you touch her. I won't have to, Lucinda whispered. She'll come to me. Then she smiled, serene and frightening, and let him shove her back into the cot. When he stepped away, she laughed softly, a sound like breaking ice. Chapter 40, Night Voices. The pack doubled their watch that night. The resort's guests never knew. Music played, fires burned, and the illusion of calm held. Clara couldn't sleep. She paced her small room until she finally slipped outside. The world was white and quiet, moonlight scattered across the snow. She walked toward the ridge trail, drawn by a pull she couldn't name. The air shimmered faintly, as if moonlight moved through glass instead of air. Her breath formed clouds that glowed pale blue. Clara. She turned. Dorian stood at the end of the path, jacket unzipped, eyes shadowed. You shouldn't be out here. I couldn't stay in there, she whispered. It's too loud inside me. He crossed the snow in a few long strides, stopping a breath away. Then let me help you drown it out. How? He took her hands, pressed them to his chest. Match this. His heartbeat was steady, strong. She focused on it until the hum inside her eased, falling into rhythm. The night went still around them. Better? He asked. She nodded. For now. He exhaled. Then we keep doing this. Whenever it tries to take you, we bring you back. You make it sound easy. It won't be. But you're stubborn. She laughed quietly. That's the nicest insult I've ever had. The laugh broke the tension. They stood under the moon, snow drifting around them, two figures breathing in sync. Somewhere below, the mountain groaned again, faint and far, but for the moment the sound felt distant, manageable. Dorian lifted his hand, brushed a strand of hair from her face. We'll find a way to quiet it, he said. Together. Clara looked up at him, the cold stinging her eyes. Promise. On my pack, he said. On my name. She believed him. For the first time since the ice split open, she felt a fragile thread of hope weave through the fear. Behind them, unseen in the valley shadow, the blue glow flickered once beneath the snow and went dark again. Chapter 41, The Morning After the Hush. The storm never came. Instead, dawn drifted in soft and silver, spreading across the valley like a held breath finally released. Frost glazed the windows again, but no fresh snow had fallen. The air looked scrubbed clean. Clara woke to the sound of water pipes and laughter from the hall, ordinary sounds that meant life had resumed. For a few moments she let herself believe the night before had been a nightmare. No humming ice, no whispering mountain, no Lucinda. Downstairs, she found Dorian at the main counter. He was talking with Marek and Evie, voice low but calm, a map spread beneath his hands. The three of them looked up when she approached. Morning, she said. Dorian's eyes softened. Morning, sunshine. Evie smirked. Look who finally slept. Clara grinned back, embarrassed. Sort of. She took the mug Marek slid toward her and inhaled the smell of coffee. So, no alarms? No glowing snow? Nothing since last night, Dorian said. We might finally have a few quiet hours. The words felt dangerous, like tempting fate, but Clara let herself relax. Good. I vote we pretend we're normal people until further notice. Pretending is your specialty, Marek said dryly, and Evie elbowed him. They laughed, and for a moment the world tilted toward ordinary. Chapter 42, Breathing Space. The day unfolded easily. Guests packed to leave before the next snowfall. Riley coaxed Stella into helping with luggage while their mother bragged to anyone who'd listen about that charming resort staff who handled the power outage like professionals. By late afternoon the lobby had quieted. The pack rotated shifts outdoors. Dorian checked reports, then joined Clara on the veranda. The sky was a washed-out blue, sun low enough to turn the snow into a sheet of light. He leaned against the railing beside her, coat open, breath fogging in the cold. I almost forgot what peace sounds like, he said. Clara smiled. It's weird, isn't it? I keep expecting thunder. Silence can be louder. She studied his profile. The tension that usually lived between his shoulders had eased, but not disappeared. You're waiting for something. Always. He glanced at her. Old habits. She hesitated, then asked, when this is really over, what happens to you? To your pack? He shrugged. We go where we're needed. Some mountains never stop whispering. And me? His answer was gentle. Wherever you want to be. The wind lifted her hair, and for an instant the world narrowed to just them, the faint warmth between their shoulders, the snow glittering like glass around them, the quiet promise in the air that neither dared name. Then, far off, something cracked. A sound too deep to belong to wood or ice. Dorian straightened. The noise didn't repeat, but the peace had already fractured. Chapter 44, Lucinda's Eyes. Later, after the guests drifted to bed, Clara helped Evie lock the outer doors. From below came the faint creak of metal, the sound of the infirmary gate shifting. Evie frowned. Stay here. I'm not hiding again. Together they descended the stairwell. The hallway smelled of disinfectant and cold air. The lights here burned steady, throwing long shadows along the tile. Lucinda lay where they'd left her, wrists bound in new silver cuffs. Her eyes were open. Evening, she murmured. You've redecorated. Evie kept her stance ready. You move, I shoot. Lucinda laughed softly. So predictable. Her gaze slid to Clara. How's our duet? Quiet, Clara said. For now, Lucinda whispered. But songs have verses. You've only sung the first. The floor vibrated again, subtle, like a held note. Lucinda smiled wider. Hear that? It remembers you. Evie raised the tranquilizer gun. That's enough. Lucinda's lashes lowered, but her voice remained calm. You'll come back when it calls. They always do. Chapter 45, Glass Moon. Near midnight the resort slept. Snow fell in fine, soundless flakes, covering footprints and memory alike. Dorian stood at the window of his room, watching the storm. He should have felt relief, no alarms, no tremors, but his instincts kept circling back to the same unease. The mountain never stopped whispering, it merely changed its language. He reached for the radio, hesitated, then set it down. For the first time in years, the urge to guard warred with something else, the need to believe in a normal life. Clara's laugh still echoed in his head, warm against the cold. A knock broke his thoughts. He opened the door to find her there, barefoot, sweater thrown over her nightshirt, eyes wide but steady. I couldn't sleep, she said. He stepped aside to let her in. What's wrong? I heard it again, she whispered. Not loud. Just, singing. He guided her to the window. Show me where. She pointed toward the ridge. At first he saw nothing. Then a faint pulse of light glimmered under the snow, one heartbeat, then gone. His jaw clenched. Stay here. No, she said quickly, grabbing his sleeve. It's not calling you. It's calling me. The words hung between them like frost. He looked down at her hand on his arm and covered it with his. Then we face it together, he said. No more running, no more pretending normal. She nodded, the fear in her eyes tempered by something fiercer. Together. Outside, the light flared once more, soft, uncertain, as if testing the boundaries of its cage. Inside, Dorian drew her closer, the warmth of his body a fragile barrier against the chill pressing through the glass. Neither spoke. The world held still around them, balanced on the edge of another storm. Chapter 46, Into the White. Wind hit like a living thing. It came screaming down from the ridge, cutting through coats, carrying shards of ice that stung every patch of skin it found. Snow blew sideways, erasing footprints as fast as they were made. Clara could barely see Dorian's back a few feet ahead, broad shoulders dark against a world made of blinding white. The rope connecting them tugged at her waist each time he surged forward. Behind her, Marek's voice rose through the wind, shouting a count to keep rhythm. They were 5 in all: Dorian, Clara, Marek, Evie, and Ben. Lucinda remained locked below the lodge, but her warning still rang in Clara's head. Songs have verses. Another gust slammed into them. Dorian raised a hand, signaling to crouch. They huddled behind an ice-bent pine until the gale eased. Visibility's dropping, Evie yelled. We're close, Dorian shouted back. His breath steamed, golden eyes flaring faintly when he looked at Clara. You holding up? She nodded, though her legs burned from the climb and her lungs tasted like iron. I can make it. Stay right on me. He turned, breaking a path through snow nearly to his knees. The ridge above flickered, a pulse of blue light beneath the drifts, faint but steady, like a heartbeat under ice. Chapter 47, The Pulse. They reached the plateau at last, the place where the fissure had once gaped. It was filled now, the snow smooth again, but the air vibrated. Each breath came out as mist that hung too long before fading. Clara felt the hum before she heard it, low, resonant, running through bone. It matched her heartbeat, quickening until the two rhythms merged. She pressed a glove to her chest. Dorian saw. Talk to me. It's stronger, she gasped. Like it's right under us. Evie planted a sensor spike into the ground. Lights flickered across its screen, steady, then wild. It's building energy again. Same frequency as before. Marek cursed. We can't dig it out mid-storm. Dorian scanned the ridge. We don't need to. We find where it's thinnest and reinforce it. Ben frowned. With what? Duct tape and hope. With will, Dorian said, voice low but sure. It listens to intent as much as sound. He turned to Clara. You're the key, remember? If it answers you, you tell it to sleep. Her throat tightened. What if it doesn't listen this time? Then it listens to me. His tone left no room for doubt. Chapter 48, The Rift Returns. They worked in pairs, hammering iron rods into the snowpack to anchor the seal runes. Wind howled harder, clawing at hoods and ropes. Dorian's coat whipped around him as he carved a line of symbols into the ice with a silver knife, every stroke glowing faintly blue. Clara knelt beside him, copying the pattern. Her fingers ached, but warmth spread from the mark she made, like the ice itself recognized her touch. The hum deepened, the snow trembling under her knees. Dorian, she whispered, it's waking. He didn't stop. Then we finish faster. A crack thundered through the plateau. The ground shivered. Evie shouted something lost to the wind. Beneath Clara's palm, the ice bulged, rising, flexing, as if something enormous pressed upward from below. Back. Dorian yelled, dragging her to her feet just as a jagged seam split open where she'd been kneeling. Light surged out, blinding. The shockwave knocked them both sideways, her shoulder hit the ground hard, pain flaring bright and sharp. Snow and air exploded together. She coughed, tasting cold metal. Through the haze she saw Dorian's silhouette fighting the wind to reach her. He dropped beside her, pulling her upright. You hurt. Just winded. His glove brushed the side of her face where blood beaded from a shallow cut. You're bleeding. I'll live. You better, he muttered, eyes flicking toward the glow. Stay behind me. Chapter 49, The Voice Below. The fissure gaped again, narrow but deep, blue light pulsing like a trapped star. A sound rolled out, not loud but immense, a note that resonated in marrow. The snow around them danced to its rhythm. Clara clutched her ears, but it wasn't a sound she could block. It lived inside her, matching the beat of her heart until she didn't know which was which. She felt herself sway. Dorian caught her, pulling her against his chest. His body was solid heat against the cold. Focus on me, he said, breath rough in her ear. Not the song. I'm trying. Try harder. His grip tightened, anchoring her as the wind tore past. Remember the lesson. Listen with your breath. She did. Slowly the hum softened, tuning to their shared heartbeat again. The fisher's light dimmed slightly. "Good," he whispered. "Now tell it to sleep." She closed her eyes and breathed out the word, not spoken but thought, pushed from somewhere deeper than her lungs. "Sleep." The light pulsed once, hesitant. "Sleep," she repeated, stronger. It answered with a tremor that threw them both to the ground. Dorian rolled, taking the brunt of the fall. Snow filled his collar, his muscles screamed from impact. But when he looked up, the glow had softened to a faint shimmer. For a moment, the mountain obeyed. Chapter 50, The Storm Within. Relief lasted seconds. A new vibration rippled through the ground, quicker, sharper. The light flared again, not steady now but flickering, erratic. "Something's wrong," Marek shouted. Evie's sensor whined. "It's echoing her pulse." Clara clutched her chest. Her heartbeat was racing, every surge made the fissure flare. "I can't slow it down." Dorian caught her face in his hands. "Look at me. Match mine. Breathe." Their foreheads touched, his breath mingled with hers, steady, deliberate. For a heartbeat the world narrowed to that rhythm. Inhale, exhale, the shared warmth between them. The light obeyed, dimming. But exhaustion hit her like a wave. Her knees buckled, he caught her, lowering her gently to the snow. "Easy," he murmured. "You did it." Behind them, Evie and Marek worked to reseal the crack, shoveling snow and chanting the stabilizing words Dorian had taught them. The wind eased, falling to a ragged sigh. When the last rune flared and went dark, the hum finally faded. Silence rolled over the ridge. Chapter 51, After the Echo. They stayed crouched there a long time, the only sound their rough breathing. The sky above had cleared to deep indigo, stars hard and bright. Snowflakes drifted lazily again, harmless now. Clara lifted her head from Dorian's shoulder. "Did we stop it?" "For now." His voice was hoarse. "You bought us another night." "Just one?" He gave a tired half-smile. "I like to be realistic." Marek radioed from a few yards away. "Readings are flat. Whatever it was, it's dormant." Dorian answered, "Good. Pack up. We're heading down before the storm circles back." As the others moved off, he helped Clara to her feet. She swayed, legs trembling from fatigue and cold. He slipped an arm around her, guiding her carefully down the slope. Their boots crunched in rhythm. "You're freezing," he said. "You're warm enough for both of us." He huffed a quiet laugh. "That's not how physics works." "Then it's magic." He didn't argue. He just tightened his hold as they descended through the drifting snow. Chapter 52, The Promise in the Dark. By the time they reached the tree line, the wind had dropped to a whisper. The resort's lights glowed faintly below, tiny constellations scattered across the valley. Clara leaned into him, every muscle aching. "Next time we investigate glowing snow, remind me to stay in bed." "Next time, I won't let you come," he said. She managed a tired smile. "You'd fail." He glanced down at her, admiration flickering through fatigue. "Probably." They stopped at the overlook where the trail curved toward the lodge. From here, the mountain looked peaceful again, the fissure invisible beneath layers of new snow. But deep inside, they both knew it was only sleeping. "Do you ever think it'll stop calling?" she asked. Dorian looked toward the peaks. "No. But maybe we can teach it to whisper." She reached for his hand, fingers cold, grip steady. "Then we keep teaching." He squeezed once, sealing the vow. Together. Below them, the valley exhaled a long sigh of wind. The faintest shimmer of blue glowed under the ridge, then went still, watching, waiting. Chapter 53, The Return. By the time they reached the resort, dawn had broken in a wash of pale gold. The storm had passed as suddenly as it had come. The valley below glittered with 1,000 shards of light, frozen tears, Clara thought, or maybe proof that the world could still be beautiful after everything. The lodge doors opened before they could knock. Evie hurried forward, hair unbound, eyes wide with relief. "You're alive." "Mostly," Dorian said. His coat was torn, his jaw shadowed with fatigue. He gave a half-smile. "The mountain's quiet." "Quiet isn't the same as safe," Evie murmured. "No," he agreed, "but it's something." Clara sank onto the nearest bench, pulling off her gloves. Her fingers trembled, not from cold but from the echo still coiled beneath her ribs. It no longer hurt, it hummed like a low lullaby, content for now. When she looked up, Lucinda stood in the corridor's shadows. Lucinda looked human again. The frost that had rimed her lashes was gone, her cheeks flushed faintly with warmth. Only her eyes betrayed her, crystal clear, reflecting light where none existed. "I felt it," she said softly. The seal shifted. "Nicely done, little songbird." Dorian moved between them in one smooth step. "Don't start." She laughed, delicate as breaking glass. "Relax, Alpha. I'm not here to fight. You patched the wound. The mountain sleeps. But it chose its dreamer." Her gaze slid to Clara. "You hear it, don't you?" Clara's throat went dry. "Sometimes." "It will never be silent for you," Lucinda said. "That's the price of harmony. A guardian must listen." Dorian's voice hardened. "You knew this would happen." Lucinda tilted her head. "I hoped. The mountain needs a voice. I was too broken to be that again." "Again?" Clara asked. Lucinda's smile turned wistful. "Once I was what you are now. Before power became hunger." The room felt colder. Dorian said quietly, "You'll leave when the pack does." Lucinda shrugged. "If I can. Frost Hollow has long arms." She stepped closer to Clara, lowering her voice. "Don't mistake stillness for peace, my dear. Mountains remember." Before Dorian could stop her, she brushed a fingertip along Clara's wrist, a touch like ice water, then turned and walked down the corridor, guards trailing warily behind. Chapter 55, Still Water. The following day unrolled soft and slow. Guests packed their cars, laughing about the great resort adventure. Riley and her family planned one more ski run before heading home. Life, stubborn and ordinary, insisted on continuing. Clara sat in the lounge by the window, hands wrapped around a mug that had gone cold. Outside, the slopes gleamed in sunlight. Nothing moved beneath the snow, yet she could feel the pulse, the faint heartbeat of Frost Hollow, steady and calm under the surface. Dorian joined her quietly. He'd shaved, though the fatigue under his eyes lingered. "How loud is it?" he asked. "Like distant music," she said. "I can almost make out words, but not quite." "You shouldn't have to live with that." "Maybe it's not punishment," she said, surprising herself. "Maybe it's trust." He studied her, expression unreadable. "You sound like a guardian already." She smiled a little. "Maybe I am one." Silence stretched between them, not heavy, just full. The fire crackled. Somewhere upstairs, a child laughed. For a moment, it all felt normal. Then Evie appeared in the doorway, coat slung over one arm. "We're heading out," she said. "The pack's regrouping at the South Pass." Dorian nodded. "Give me a minute." Evie looked from him to Clara, then grinned faintly and withdrew. They walked outside together. The air was crisp, filled with sunlight that turned every flake of snow to diamonds. The mountains loomed, vast and white and alive. "So this is it?" Clara asked. "For now." Dorian's breath misted in the cold. "The pack will head east, keep watch along the range. If the seal weakens again, we'll know." "And me?" He turned to face her fully. "You stay. The mountain knows your rhythm now. You'll feel the tremors before anyone else does. You're leaving me with a haunted glacier." "I'm leaving you with a choice," he said gently. "You can stay here, live your life, or you can treat this place like a calling." "And you?" He smiled, tired but sincere. "I'll keep moving. Alphas don't get to keep still very long." The words hurt more than she expected. "So that's it? You disappear into the next blizzard?" "Not disappear," he said. "Just step back until you need me." Clara swallowed against the lump in her throat. "That sounds a lot like disappearing." Dorian reached out, brushing his fingers against her cheek. "I'd rather call it patience." The warmth of his hand steadied her even as her heart ached. She covered his hand with hers, holding it there. "You're terrible at goodbyes." "Then let's not make it one." He leaned in, pressed his forehead to hers, their old unspoken ritual. The hum inside her softened, matching the beat of his pulse. It felt less like magic and more like understanding. "Stay alive, Alpha," she whispered. "Always," he said. Then, quieter, "Don't let the mountain take you." "I won't," she promised. "But I'll listen." He smiled, eyes bright with something she didn't have a word for. "That's what makes you dangerous." Then he turned toward the ridge where his pack waited. Snow hissed beneath his boots. He didn't look back until he reached the tree line. When he did, she lifted a hand. He mirrored the gesture, and that was enough. Spring came late to Frost Hollow. The ice on the ridge melted in thin veins, revealing stone shot through with veins of silver. Tourists returned, drawn by stories they couldn't explain. The resort rebuilt, expanded, lived. Clara stayed. Some nights the hum beneath the mountain rose again, faint and steady like a sleeping heart. She learned its moods, the sigh before a thaw, the long silence before storms. When the rhythm shifted, she sang under her breath, the melody Dorian had taught her, and the valley listened. Lucinda was gone by the time the snows melted. Some said she'd taken a train south, others swore they saw her walking into the glacier at dusk, barefooted and smiling. Clara never asked which was true. The mountain would tell her if it mattered. On quiet mornings, she'd stand on the deck with coffee and watch the horizon. Sometimes, when the wind blew from the east, she swore she could hear a wolf's low call echoing through the peaks. It wasn't lonely. It was a reminder. Frost Hollow breathed, slow, content, alive. The mountain slept, dreaming its endless white dream, and she was its watcher, its whisper, its song. Late one evening, months later, a storm rolled in from the north. The guests had gone. The resort was empty except for staff finishing up for the season. Clara locked the doors, checked the fires, and climbed to the lookout terrace. Snow fell thick and soft, muting the world. In the distance the ridge glowed faintly, blue, then silver, then dark again. She closed her eyes and listened. The hum came, quiet as breath, not a warning now, but a greeting. She answered with a single note, humming low in her throat, and the mountain's rhythm fell in line with hers. Peace. Not perfect, but real. When she opened her eyes, she thought she saw a shadow at the edge of the trees, broad-shouldered, still, watching. For a heartbeat she almost called out. But the wind shifted, carrying the faintest echo of Dorian's voice. Always. She smiled through the falling snow. Always, she whispered back. And Frost Hollow, ancient and endless, whispered its reply.